Hello, hello, hello. Happy July 4th, everyone. This is Two Nates on Sports. My name is Nathan Simmons, and with me, as always, is Nathan Kwan. We have a lot to discuss. NBA free agency. We'll also talk a bit about MLB season this week. First, start off with free agency. A lot of big names changing teams, especially this past week. The biggest being Paul George. What did you think of the deal, man?
Yeah, so last night it came down Paul George going from the Indiana Pacers to the Oklahoma City Thunder in exchange for Victor Oladipo as well as Domantas Sabonis. So I think I just don't like this whole situation with Paul George coming out and saying he doesn't want to re-sign with the Pacers, which basically destroys his trade value because teams are basically just going to be renting him for 1 year and they're not going to be willing to part with a lot of their big assets. Secondly, just the fit with Oklahoma City. So I don't think Paul George elevates the Thunder to a championship contender with the Golden State Warriors, the Rockets, and the Spurs. I mean, Sam Presti didn't give up a lot here. Victor Oladipo is coming off a season where he was terrible shooting the ball. Obviously, he's so young and he still has potential, and Indiana's hoping that he becomes a 20-point-a-game scorer in this league. Domantas Sabonis is a really raw, young, big man, and he can shoot the three. Got to get a little bit stronger, but I'm just a little bit surprised there wasn't more that they could get for a player of Paul George, a multi-time All-Star, borderline superstar. And then a team, especially like Boston, has all these assets, and Danny Ainge is he overplaying his hand at this point? Like he not making a move for either Jimmy Butler or Paul George.
Yeah, it's absolutely absurd how Danny Ainge seems to just be like sitting on all these draft picks, even though he has a contending team right now that he could be pretty much enhancing with all these trades. That being said, Indiana had multiple suitors coming out after them who I believe had better offers than the one that OKC ended up offering. I mean, they essentially traded Serge Ibaka for Paul George, and like that's not a deal that you really do. I mean, Victor Oladipo has been kind of a disappointment ever since he's been traded. I mean, he's someone that was considered the best prospect in a very weak 2013 draft, mind you. But his for whatever reason, the elite athleticism that he has not really translated into much beyond simply a role player right now. And Domantas Sabonis right now, I mean, he's really considered at best a role player, and I don't see him developing much beyond that. And not even getting a first-round pick back is very strange, to say the least. I just don't really understand this trade here for Indiana. And then for OKC, this to me is kind of a bit of equal parts a rejection of what Sam Presti has been doing this entire time, as well as like it kind of fits what they're trying to do. So I mean, if you think about it, I mean, this is a team that had at one point not only Serge Ibaka on their team, but James Harden, Kevin Durant. Like they essentially traded away a championship when they traded away James Harden. Basically, for the past 5 years, what they've done is just trade away talent before they can possibly leave, and so that they can still build towards the future. And that's what they did with James Harden and Serge Ibaka. And that ultimately, to me, is what drove away Kevin Durant. This to me seems to be Sam Presti going like, you know what, I'm not going to do the same thing again, and I'm going to take the ultimate risk in getting someone that, for all intents and purposes, is saying they're going to be a rental, and then hoping that they want to stay in OKC and play with Russell Westbrook long term, which I mean is a very big risk. You know, I mean, granted, yes, Russell Westbrook did just win the MVP award, but like that wasn't enough to keep Kevin Durant there. I mean, granted, I think this is still a great fit. I mean, if there's anyone out there that can play up to the level of Kevin Durant at the small forward position, it's Paul George. And so we'll see how this goes. I mean, again, I don't think this puts them over enough to beat the Warriors, even though I believe that Westbrook is technically better than Steph Curry. This is beyond just a risk of trying to beat the Warriors this year. This is all about like trying to convince Paul George to stay in OKC.
Yeah, that's the biggest question with this deal, because it seems like you only make this deal if you think you can convince Paul George to stay in Oklahoma City long term. And if you go by his comments, like he didn't like Indiana, and you're going to Oklahoma City, that's an even smaller market. And the fit with Westbrook, like Crazy Russ was the MVP because he was the alpha lead dog. And everybody deferred to him last year. And Paul George is a guy that it seems like he wants to be the guy. I mean, he made comments during the playoffs that he should have been the guy to take the last shot against the Cavs in, I believe, their game 2 loss. And so, like, how do those two personalities mix? And it really, like, if you think you can sign him long term, then you stole him. But if it's just a rental, then it seems like kind of a waste, because you gave away 2 young players for renting. It'll put you closer to a championship this upcoming year. Barring catastrophic injury from other teams, it's not going to make you into a championship contender. So I don't understand the play is for either side in this situation.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really doesn't make any sense. I mean, granted, like, I feel like they could probably, like, even if Paul George leaves next year, they could probably sign some talent that could replace Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis, just because, like, I mean, no offense to either of them, but they weren't giving that much more over replacement, I feel. I mean, obviously, Indianapolis is banking on Oladipo being more than what he's shown so far. The other big trade this week actually did involve the Houston Rockets, and the Houston Rockets now are the home of Chris Paul, and that's going to be arguably one of the best backcourts in the league. What's your take, Houston Rocket fan, Quan?
So my first thoughts, which I posted on our Facebook page, was I was absolutely shocked when I heard of the news. One thing you can say about Daryl Morey, he does not go for walks. He swings out of his shoe tops for the home run, and he landed another big fish. Mixed feelings on this trade. So firstly, Patrick Beverley was my favorite Houston Rocket player. That guy was the heart and soul of the team. He was a bulldog. He did all the dirty work. He gave it his all in every possession. Defensively, he improved his offense as well. He's become an above average 3-point shooter in the game. And when he got into the league, that wasn't the case. And him alongside James, like, James Harden's not going to defend. Pat Beverley defended the best guard on the other team every night. And so he's going to be missed. As far as the other players that went, Lou Williams, I mean, he had a good contribution. That's not a huge loss. He was very inconsistent in the playoffs for them. The young players they lost, Sam Decker, didn't really see too much of him. He was hurt the first couple of years, but he looks like he's got promise. And then Montrez and Kyle Wiltshire, 2 young guys, I think going to end up, their ceiling is going to be a role player in the league, so that's not too big a loss. But I mean, for the Clippers, this is a great deal. Like, if Chris Paul's not going to resign, you were going to lose him for nothing, and you end up getting some nice pieces in return in trying to stay relevant in LA. Obviously, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but Chris Paul's going to help with the leadership in the locker room. He's going to hold James Harden accountable on the defensive end. Harden just isn't a leader, and I mean, that's just not in his DNA. And Chris Paul instantly, in that locker room, everybody's going to turn to him. He's been through the wars in the Western Conference. Winning is so important to him. He lives and breathes winning. And James Harden, you can't say the same for that. So I think it's going to help with that. The concerns are the fit, and we talked about it before, but James Harden and Chris Paul both need the ball in their hands to be successful. And it's going to be an adjustment period with them and head coach Mike D'Antoni on how they're going to run this offense, because last year, James Harden was one of the best point guards in the league because he handled the rock. He can obviously score and get to the basket whenever he wants, but he also set up his teammates. And in 2015, when they tried to bring in another point guard with Ty Lawson and move Harden off the ball, it was disastrous results. Harden wasn't engaged. And obviously, Chris Paul's a way better player than Ty Lawson was, but I mean, you're still going to have concerns because when Paul's off the ball, like he's not as effective. He sets the table for everybody. And if you're going to relegate him to a spot up shooting role, that's not when he's most effective. In the press conference this week, Mike D'Antoni did say that this might open the door for more rest for James because he did wear down at the end of last year in the playoffs, especially against the Spurs. And so he and Paul are kind of staggering their minutes throughout so that one of them's on the floor at all times. And you're going to have an elite point guard that can get the ball to the shooters and create offense, because at times last year when Harden was on the court, it was a struggle for them. So there's good and bad. In the end, I think Chris Paul gives the Rockets a better shot at a championship in the short term. We're going to see if he signs long term, and because right now they haven't announced anything about an extension or anything like that. I feel like if it doesn't work out with him and James in the locker room, he could bolt, and then the Rockets would have to kind of start over the next offseason. This offseason, they might not be done either. Carmelo Anthony's name has been floated out there. So if they were going to try to come together and make a mini super team here, that could be an option. But it's exciting at times, but then it's also a little bit scary because you're taking a 55-win team that was so successful last year and you're really shaking it up and adding an alpha dog and Chris Paul, and we'll see where they end up this upcoming year.
Yes, let me play the world's smallest violin right now for the Rockets fans. But that being said, I mean, like, yeah, like there's definitely some concerns about the fit, but I mean, like you guys have like arguably like the best point guard in the league still. I mean, that's not Russell Westbrook or Steph Curry, but even then, it's the Rockets were not going to be able to beat the Warriors going forward by adding Chris Paul. Not only do you guys like get someone that's incredible, like that's an incredible player, but you make yourselves an even more attractive place as a free agent destination. Now, that being said, like, I mean, if James Harden cannot find a way to work out with Chris Paul, like that says a heck of a lot more about James Harden than it does about anything else. And you guys might actually have to consider trading away James Harden to some extent if he can't fit with another player. But that also being said, like, I mean, like at the end of the day, like this team is going to be built around James Harden. Like James Harden is the franchise at this point.
Chris Paul, James Harden, and Mike D'Antoni were all part of the USA Basketball, and that obviously ended up working out very well. And so hopefully they, those three have some sort of relationship where they can make it work next year. I mean, we still need a big guy. I wanted to go after a Paul Millsap or a Serge Ibaka and add that to the team that you had last year. They've gone in a different direction. At this point, I don't think they're going to get one of those big fish.
And on top of that, too, I mean, that's some other big news going on this week. The Minnesota Timberwolves making moves. Not only did they introduce Jimmy Butler as a part of the team's core, in which during that press conference, he gave out his personal phone number and let fans call him and FaceTime him, which was amazing. I mean, that was honestly so cool to see. And on top of that, they ended up trading away Ricky Rubio to the Utah Jazz for a first-round pick, and then turning around and getting Jeff Teague. What did you think of those moves?
I mean, I like Jeff Teague's game. I think he was really good in Atlanta. He had a bit of a disappointing year last year with Indiana. I mean, that Pacers team was just was not very good. They had chemistry issues and they fell short of their ultimate goal. But yeah, the West is just brutal. Minnesota is another team that looks like it's going to be in contention for a playoff spot for the next 5 years at least. It's going to be on the head coach, Tom Thibodeau, now to put it together because he was a big get for them. They paid him a lot of money to come over. And I mean, granted, they had a lot of injuries last year, but he was not successful in getting that group to the playoffs. So we'll see how they put it together. I think for Utah, getting Rubio means they probably think they're going to lose George Hill in free agency. And obviously they're trying to retain Gordon Hayward as well. So, I mean, Utah, if they lose Hayward, obviously that's going to be a big blow for them. And they're going to have to kind of retool because they don't have the guards on that roster to compete with all these monster teams in the Western Conference now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, honestly, I was surprised when I went on a Minnesota Timberwolves fan website and saw like how negative some of the reactions were. I mean, Jeff Teague's a former All-Star, but I mean, on top of that too, like everyone was saying like, oh, he only shot 35% from 3-point land, and Ricky Rubio shot 31% last year. But I'm like, dude, you guys have to check like all of his previous seasons. Like he's had seasons where he shot like 40% from like 3-point range. Like, I mean, Jeff Teague's a better shooter than Ricky Rubio. I mean, that should not have to be restated. As much as Ricky Rubio has improved on that end. But I mean, like, that's the problem too, is that Ricky Rubio, he's great at almost everything except shooting. But like, this is a league where you have to be able to shoot the ball. And especially with the Minnesota Timberwolves, which struggled a lot last year, especially when Ricky Rubio was on the floor in order to help space the offensive end. And that made things a lot tougher for Cat and Andrew Wiggins, in spite of the fact that both of them ended up still scoring 20 points a game. But being able to do that along with having like Jimmy Butler, that should open up lanes for both Jimmy Butler, Andrew Wiggins, and Ricky Rubio for them to drive to the hoop. But that should also help clear the floor for Cat so that he can do his thing in the paint. And then obviously, I mean, there's still like I feel like this is still not the end for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I feel like they're still going to probably make a play for someone to play at the 4. To some of the players that you alluded to, like Serge Ibaka or Paul Millsap. I don't think they're going to get they're not going to get anyone that big beyond those two. A lot, it's also going to depend on whether or not they're going to be willing to take a little bit of pay cut, especially with Serge Ibaka, since this is like his prime chance for him to get a big time contract, and he's probably not going to take much of a discount versus like Paul Millsap, though, who he's made a lot of money going forward, and so this is the last big contract that he can get. But he's also someone that wants to get a ring, and if he signs with that Minnesota Timberwolves team, you have basically all-star caliber players at every position, for at least former all-star players at each position too.
The one thing I have to say is,
go ahead.
Those players, how they fit together is going to be very important, because Karl Anthony Towns is a guy, he's a throwback. You throw it to him in the block and you get out of the way and let him go to work. Jeff Teague's a guy that needs the ball, and he's not a distributing point guard. He's a scoring point guard. Jimmy Butler's a guy that also needs isolation style basketball. And then Wiggins last year was that as well. So you got on the perimeter, you have 3 guys that need the ball in their hands, and their primary skills are to score and not to create for each other. And they don't really do much off the ball. So it looks all good on paper, but I think Tom Thibodeau has some work to do to put that together.
He does, but I do want to add this though. Cat's, he has a bit of a throwback to his game, but he's also someone that can shoot it from 3 and at a very good clip. There are people there that can do spot up shooting.
Yeah, I want to talk briefly just about the Clippers. They re-signed Blake Griffin to a massive contract, but that whole situation in LA, I think the Clippers they've blown it the last couple of years. The Chris Paul thing with Doc Rivers and Austin Rivers, there's rumors that came out this week, and they've been really swirling that Chris Paul wasn't happy with the way Doc Rivers handled his son. There are rumors that they could have potentially gotten Carmelo last year in a deal, but Doc wasn't willing to trade his son. And these are just all rumors. There's no factual basis to all this, but I always say where there's smoke, there's fire. And if Doc Rivers let his father hat be ahead of his coaching and GM hat, I think that's a disservice to the franchise. And you lose a superstar point guard like Chris Paul, it's going to set your franchise back. So the Clippers, and with the Lakers coming back up with Lonzo Ball, and then next year they're going to try to get Paul George or LeBron. I think the Clippers have blown their opportunity to build a real passionate fan base out there, because having Blake locked in long term is nice, but at this point they're going to be a bottom tier playoff team in the West, and that's another topic. That is, Doc Rivers overrated as a coach, because he won the 1 championship in Boston the first year, but before that he was in Orlando, he didn't win anything. Before the big 3 got there in Boston, he didn't win anything, and then this Clippers team has perennially underachieved in the West. So I don't know, this whole thing with Chris Paul, Austin Rivers, and Doc Rivers is not a good situation, and it doesn't look good for Doc.
Oh, absolutely no. I remember just rewatching some clips of the Clippers, and not to play with the pun there, but you watch the games and you just see how little player movement there is on the offensive end, and how people are just sort of just standing around just waiting for Chris Paul to give orders. And that's the thing with Doc Rivers, is that he's so dependent on having a floor general playing the point who can basically draw up plays on the fly. Because to me, it looks like Doc Rivers can't really do it himself. I highly doubt he refused to trade his own son just for Carmelo. I highly doubt those rumors. Does he overplay his son? Yes, absolutely. And he did trade for his son in order to have his son on his team. I definitely will say that. And also at the same time, you can have a rumor that gets repeated a ton, but it's still just a rumor. I remember when during the whole DeAndre fiasco, how Chris Broussard was saying that Mark Cuban was driving around Houston, asking people where DeAndre's house was. And it was just very clearly a lie. But that got repeated just so much because it was so incredulous. That's the same feeling I get with those rumors about Doc Rivers not trading his son. Like,
I think it's just Jerry West might have gotten there too late because I mean we can debate Doc Rivers the coach, but Doc Rivers the GM has been horrible. I mean you look at the track record of the deals they've made; it's been bad.
Yeah. I mean, that being said, though, he did get a better return for Chris Paul than Indiana did for Paul George. I will say that.
Just a couple quick things. So I have a coworker who's a big Knicks fan. He was basically celebrating when they announced Phil Jackson was going to be fired. I mean, New York's clown show has been very well documented. We'll see what they do with Carmelo. James Dolan, the owner, doesn't want to buy him out. But, I mean, what is the direction of that franchise now? I mean, you have a coach that was brought in to run the triangle offense, and you drafted and built players to run that offense, and now what are you going to do?
I mean, in all fairness, though, with the coach, like, I mean, I don't even think the coach himself, Hornacek, I believe, actually, he himself was not too high on the triangle or trying to fit it in this past year. And it was only until there have been stuff floated out there that he himself did not want to run it once he saw that how useless the triangle was in modern NBA. I mean, at the end of the day, the reason they ended up firing Phil was because of the trade rumors around Kristaps Porzingis. And so, I mean, that's the big takeaway for the Knicks is that they're committed to building around Kristaps, which is absolutely what they should be doing. I mean, like, I am super high on Kristaps. He's someone that genuinely is someone that you can say is the heir apparent to Dirk Nowitzki. Very different games between the two, but I mean, like, in terms of big, sweet shooting Euros, like, yeah, no, definitely. I would say he's definitely the heir apparent to that. But definitely it's going to be a big question going forward is, like, what they do with Carmelo. I mean, like, honestly, at this point, like, think that it'd be good for the Knicks to just try tanking again for next year a bit and trying to get a higher draft pick, just because, like, I don't really see all that many people lining up to sign with the Knicks.
All right, now let's talk baseball, and let's welcome in our baseball expert, Evan Tenenbaum, again. And we're past the halfway point of the season, and a lot of storylines in the league.
Yeah, sure. Like you said, it's basically at the halfway point, and you're going to start to see probably some moves coming into the next month, with the end of the month being the trade deadline. But again, there's just such a logjam all around. A lot of teams aren't sure whether they're going to be buying or selling. Texas Rangers, they are one of them. After these past 2 weeks, you're still not able to tell if this team is good or if they're bad or not. They just got through their first round of a very tough road schedule, and they're on their second one. This one not as successful, where they won the series against the Yankees 2 out of 3 games, but then they went to Cleveland and only won 1 out of there. So another mixed bag week, really. And it's really funny how they find different ways to lose games these days. More bullpen issues, more offense issues at times. Starting pitching's been about pretty average. So it's really just a mixed bag for these Rangers. We can talk about positives right now. Adrian Beltre is one of the best national treasures you can find out there, and you really need to be watching him. In the Cleveland series, he had 3 straight games where he had a homer. He's 39. He's still pulling up these power numbers. He even had a go-ahead run on Tuesday, on the day that our offense couldn't do anything, but Adrian Beltre could. So it's really something when you have a guy like that in your cleanup hit, in the cleanup spot. He just does something to your offense that seems to ignite something. He's now at 30 hits away from 3,000. So he's probably going to hit that either at the end of this month or the week after in August. Now, I'm actually concerned that he'll hit it on the day that Pudge Rodriguez is supposed to get his number retired. So we're going to have conflicting opinions on whether we should be celebrating A-Train or Pudge at that time. So hopefully maybe they'll do the right thing and bench him that day. If he hasn't hit 3,000. And I guess in the other 2 offensive threats this week, the rest of the team has kind of been lackluster. But the 2 I'd say are still pretty hot. Elvis Andrus, something about going to Cleveland just ignites something in him. He had 3 home runs in the Cleveland series, gave him 10 for the year. Guess what? That's a career high for Elvis Andrus. This is the first time he's hit double-digit home runs in his career. It's insane. He is second in the AL for shortstops in RBIs and second in hits behind Correa and Xander Bogaerts, respectively. And with his slightly above average defense, I would argue that he's probably the second best shortstop in the game right now behind Correa. And he probably should be your all-star pick. And then the other guy I would like to mention is Robinson Chirinos, who is I would argue is the best backup catcher in the game. But it seems like there's some poise every time he gets up to bat. Either he's going to strike out or he's going to blast a home run. He's had an interesting career where he's been mauled by injury and overexposure when he's been the starter. But when he's fit into a backup role, most notably after Lucroy came in the trade, he's fit out pretty quite nicely, starting maybe every 2 out of 5 games, being able to provide a spark at the back end of the lineup. And so it's really cool to see a backup catcher like Robinson Chirinos having so much success. His career ISO numbers have just improved every single season he's been on the team. So you're wondering, like, well, why can't he handle being the starting catcher? And like I said, he has huge injury concerns and he has some overexposure risk. So even with Lucroy having a pretty lukewarm season right now, it's hard to imagine that Chirinos is going to get more playing time. But then again, you always want to see the catching tandem to have success. And right now with Chirinos and Lucroy, they are having success. Now let's talk about the bad. The bullpen's having some more issues, same as always. It's a different person this time. And that's how Matt Bush, who had gotten the closer role about a month or so ago and was doing a pretty good job in the last 4 series. There's been one game that's been blown in every single series, in the Toronto series and in Cleveland and the Yankees, and now last night in Chicago, the 2-run lead got blown. So now we're running into issues with this bullpen again. And it's not just Dyson, it's not just Barnett and Jeffress, and it's Bush. So, and it goes back into that philosophy of bullpens are transient. You never know year to year how good they're going to be. It's just really frustrating having a guy unable to really close out the game. And it leads me to look at this bullpen and see which arms really are the ones that are going to be able to get it done. Alex Claudio currently has a 2.70 ERA. He's had a couple of bad outings, and he doesn't have really a strikeout pitch. He's kind of in the middle with the strikeout rate. So you don't really want to go with him as a closer. And he's a lefty, so you don't want to burn your lefty. Keone Kela, he probably has the best peripherals out of anyone in the rotation right now. But again, he does have those personality and injury concerns. He actually was not available to close last night, so it wasn't possible. Jose Leclerc probably has the best stuff on the team, but his walk rate is atrocious. He still has some command issues, and really, you don't want your closer to have command issues in a tight game. He walks a lot. So literally every single piece in this bullpen has some issues that maybe JD or Banny are thinking, okay, well, maybe we can't use him as a closer. Maybe he won't have success. Maybe he'll end up blowing the game or something like that. But now we're getting to that point in the season where we need to start locking down and we need to start realizing what we have is what we have. Well, there isn't going to be any help. We tried that with Preston Claiborne and Tanner Shepard and Ernesto Fria. They're pretty lukewarm relievers. No help's going to come, and except other than maybe buying at the deadline, but that may be a gamble. You don't want to risk your prospects at this point. So maybe it's you are what you are, and you just have to keep reshuffling the bullpen, keep retweaking things. I'd say give Keone Kela a try. I'd say maybe giving Jose Leclerc a try, a closer spot. It's just insane how much this bullpen has been hurting this team this year. It'll always get better in waves and always get worse in waves. Hopefully they'll steer the course in the next 3 weeks and play good enough to keep this team still in the wild card race. So the next week they finish out this White Sox series in Chicago. And then they finally come home, play Boston and the Los Angeles Angels. So what are the Astros doing this week?
So the Astros went 3-3 this past week. They finished off winning a series in Seattle, and then they won 2 out of 3 against the A's. They're playing the Yankees this weekend, and they lost last night. But it's really been the offense carrying the team, especially the top of the lineup with George Springer, Josh Reddick, Jose Altuve, and Carlos Correa. That top 4 is absolutely on fire. I think their OPSs in the past week have been all over 1,000. And it's helped this team because the pitching has been horrific. We know about all the injuries in the starting rotation, and the guys that filled in have been pretty good, but this past week was not the case. David Paulino was not good. Francis Marquez wasn't good. Brad Peacock got roughed up. And then Mike Fiers, who's been really your ace the past 3 weeks, he didn't have a good start either. And it's affecting your bullpen because starters are just not getting deep into games. And the Astros bullpen, while it's been good for the most part throughout the season, they're overworked at this point. And at this point, like, we know that the starting rotation needs help, especially when you got news that Dallas Keuchel is going to be shut down until after the All-Star break. And that lingering neck issue just concerns me because if he's healthy, he's going to be pitching. And I know there's some that say that the Astros have a huge lead, a 12-13 game lead in the American League West. They don't need to rush Dallas Keuchel back. But if he's healthy, he's going to be out there. And Lance McCullers, he's been injured throughout his career, and so you can't really depend on him. And starters just don't get deep into game. Keuchel's really the only guy in your rotation that's a innings eater. So I think definitely they need to get a starting pitcher. They also need to get a reliever at this point. I think the bullpen's been okay, but I just don't trust anyone outside of Chris Stefanski in a close game in the playoffs. We know Ken Giles has had his struggles and with his consistency. It's like some nights he's 3 up and 3 down. Some nights he's walks the bases loaded and then has to get out of a jam. And when he sliders over the plate, it just gets rocked for home runs. Luke Gregerson, who's been dependable the last 2 years, he's been horrible this year. I don't know what's happened to him with his command. Will Harris has been solid. He was an all-star last year, but he hasn't shown that he can perform down the stretch. And part of that may be he's been overworked throughout the season, so he breaks down in September and October. But, I mean, we just haven't seen that level of success. And then the rest of the guys in the bullpen, James Hoyt gave up 2 grand slams this past week, so I don't trust him. Michael Feliz has potential, really good arm, but he's had trouble with location as well. And then Tony Sipp, who's supposed to be your lockdown lefty reliever, he's been bad this year. He's been bad really the last 2 years. And so they need a loogie, I think, for sure. They came into the season knowing that Sipp was coming off a struggling year, and they were hoping a guy like James Hoyt, who had good blitz against left-handed hitters, would be able to do the job, but he hasn't been good. So the guys they've called up from AAA haven't really been that successful as well. So I think for me, personally as a fan, I would like a starting pitcher and a reliever. I think the offense is special, and you don't want to waste it with just a pitching staff that can't seem to find consistency. And I want to ask this to you, Evan, because like the bullpen has been so key to success in the last couple of years in the playoffs. We looked at 2015 with the Royals winning it all. That starting rotation wasn't that good, but that bullpen that they had just locked down games. And then last year, you saw what the Indians had with Andrew Miller, Cody Allen, and then the Cubs obviously getting Aroldis Chapman. But as an Astros fan base, we don't want to waste a special offense, but there's also kind of a balance. Like we don't want to sell the farm to chase after this one ring because this team is so young and it wants to compete at a high level for the next decade. And if you're going to sell off a bunch of your minor league prospects for rental for a starting pitcher, that's a really tough. So like, I guess what would you do in this situation, or what would you think they would do?
I mean, there are a lot of factors that I think that go into it. I think one of your biggest factors right now is you do have a 13 game lead over the next team in the AL West. So you have a little bit of room to breathe. Maybe that gives you incentive to not go out and get someone. But then again, you look at the positives and negatives of trading away prospects. If you have a lot of prospects, the likelihood of all of them panning out in the big leagues is pretty slim. Even in one trade or so, if you give away 3 or 4 prospects, the likelihood of all of them having success at some point is pretty slim. You look at the Rangers when they traded for Cole Hamels, the 6 guys that they gave up to the Phillies. Matt Harrison, he's out of the league. Alec Asher, he's already on a different team. Nick Williams, he just got to the majors, and we have no idea what he's going to do. Jorge Alfaro had a little bit of struggles in the major leagues so far, but he could be good. Eichhoff had a great first season and maybe a second season, and then I was kind of tailed off out of that. But that's basically, you gave up 6 really promising guys in Matt Harrison, and basically only one has panned out so far, and it's been 2 years right now. It may take maybe 3 or 4 years for one of these kinds of trades to really pan out. But at that point, you may still even be in contention or in the window, and it won't even matter to you. So I guess in that sense, if you have the prospects and you have a guaranteed great player that falls into your lap at this point. And now it's to say that the relief pitching is pretty transient, like we always say. So I don't know how I feel about trading for relievers all the time. But if you have a lockdown starter that can go 7 innings anytime, if you have that one bat off the bench that can do it, or if you have a glaring hole in your offense that needs to be plugged, I'd say it probably is worth the risk to go for it, especially considering how many prospects you still have after the trade. And this is coming from a fan of a team that's done that in the last 2 seasons and is starting to run low on prospects at this point. And maybe that's a reason why the window's closing. Like I said, it's only 29 teams don't win the World Series. So basically, if your expectation is that you're going to win the World Series, then you're going to be upset at any trade that happens. So, at that point, I'd say Houston should go for it. They definitely need a starter to fill in their back end, an innings leader, because I think their relief squad is very good when they're not overworked. So if you fix that issue, then maybe the rest will fall in place.
Yeah, another thing that I've been mentioning the last couple of weeks is just the way that the American League is right now. Every team is in it, minus Oakland or the White Sox. I mean, Detroit, they're all 5+ back of the wild card, but everybody else is still in it. So we still have a month before the trade deadline, so a lot could happen between now and then. But it seems like there's not a lot of sellers at this point, especially if you're looking for a starting pitcher. Just names have been floated out there. Justin Verlander, which I want no part of that horrific contract, especially when he's declining in his mid-30s. Sonny Gray, but I mean, he hasn't really had a great year, and so how much are you going to give up for him? Chris Archer, I don't think Tampa's going to be selling at this point. They're right there in the wild card race, and he's under team control. So I really don't know who's going to be available and how much are you going to have to give up to get them.
Exactly, and that's really what I think. July may be one of the most important months for some teams. Obviously, it's the dog days of summer, and weather will affect how you play. But depending on how a team plays, it's June and July. It'll decide basically the fate of a team. So, I mean, you have 6 or 7 different teams right now in the wild card race. You have LA, Seattle, and Texas in the West. You have Minnesota sort of combating Cleveland for the lead in the AL Central, but Cleveland kind of took control. So you would assume that Minnesota is in the hunt for the wild card in the Central. Then you have basically every single AL East team that's competing in the East. So it's really hard to say. Of the teams that I see out there, I'd probably put talent level. I think Texas has the talent. They just obviously have some minor tweaking issues. Surprising young guys in Minnesota, even though I don't think they have the talent. Tampa looks pretty average. Toronto has this issue of getting close to 500 but not crossing the threshold. They're really missing Edwin Encarnacion's bat, I think. And then Baltimore has 0 pitching. We talked about how good they were at the beginning of the season, but they've fallen off incredibly bad. So I'd say that we're going a month into advance, but I'd say if these teams have a successful July, we'd look at maybe the Yankees, Texas, Tampa Bay, Minnesota still being in the wild card hunt and potentially being hesitant buyers. And I don't know if this is for good or for bad of the game by having so many teams still in the wild card race. But it's something that really can't formulate until really the end of this month. At least in the NL, the wildcard race seems pretty clear. The NL West teams, whoever is the second or third place, seem like they're going to get it. And maybe potentially the second place team in AL Central, whether that's the Brewers or the Cubs, may sneak in. But AL wildcard, it's a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say on Tampa is that they have really good starting pitching, and that whenever you have top 5 starting pitching in the league, you're going to have a shot. And I mean, they've gotten career year from Corey Dickerson, so the offense has been above average for them as well. I want to talk about some teams that have been struggling this year. Notably, between the 3 of us, we picked the New York Mets to make the playoffs, and it just seems like injuries have just wrecked that team again.
I'll go on record as saying that I thought that they had the best rotation in the majors, period. And I feel like such a fool for saying that because they've been pretty bad this year. And like I said, the number one candidate really for that is injuries. You basically look at that rotation right now. You got one guy that you expected to be there and good, Jacob deGrom, and he's basically the only one left. Harvey's had issues. Zach Wheeler's had issues. Syndergaard had some issues really early in the season. And really, their fill-in guys have just been pretty mediocre. I mean, Steven Mass has awful peripherals, even though he has a good ERA. Seth Lugo, same thing. And so you got to look at the other issues with the team, that their bullpen really is pretty average, other than Addison Reed, who's still pretty beastly. Their offense again is about average. So you got to wonder, like, with a healthy rotation, maybe the Mets could have been more competitive with the Nationals, who are also having similar bullpen issues like the Astros are, but they have such a large lead that they may not worry about it as much.
Yeah, another team that we all had as in the playoffs was the San Francisco Giants, and they've just been bad all around, bad offense other than Buster Posey, and then their pitching staff has been bad. Bumgarner's also been hurt for them.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the deal with San Francisco is this year. Obviously, it's an odd year, so it's obvious they weren't going to win the World Series. They have had other lingering issues that have been going on. Brandon Crawford's been having a very disappointing year with a 644 OPS, only 6 home runs this year. Maybe he'll improve, maybe he won't. A couple of different injury issues. Hunter Pence is starting to regress. Brandon Bell is having a pretty good year, but not as beastly as he was in the past couple of years. And like you said, that pitching staff is been completely disappointing. I don't remember whether I said this or someone else said this at the beginning of the year, that this rotation has the prime candidates for regression, most notably Johnny Cueto and Jeff Samardzija, who've had pretty pedestrian years. Samardzija has an awful ERA, even though his peripherals are better than that. Johnny Cueto is having an okay year, I guess. He want to anchor him at the rotation with Bumgarner being out. Matt Moore has just been awful this year. It's incredible. Tampa Bay got rid of him at the right time. I used to think Matt Moore was an incredible player, a prime number 2, number 3 kind of guy. He probably doesn't belong in this rotation at this point. And then one more thing about the Giants is they did pick up Sam Dyson a couple weeks ago, who looks like he's improved his numbers a little bit with 10 strikeouts in 7 1/3 innings. So, I mean, good for Sam Dyson that he's starting to turn his year around a little bit, but he's not going to save that Giants team.
Another team, I mean, obviously the NL Central has been wide open, but the two teams that were expected to contend at the top between the Cubs and the Cardinals, they've both had disappointing years. We'll start with St. Louis. I think it's just offensively, they've not gotten good from basically anybody. Matt Carpenter, supposed to be their all-star, is hitting 231. Steven Piscotty's their number 3 hitter. He's hitting 247. So just pretty anemic offense in St. Louis.
Yeah, and then in Chicago, it's pretty much the same thing. It's more anemic offense. Addison Russell's having it as an OPS plus of 81, batting 228. I mean, come on. Albert Almora in center field. They just got rid of their backup catcher. They're having
Don't
issues.
call out your teammates, I guess.
Yeah, I think, don't call out your teammates and maybe play a little bit better, and you maybe have a better excuse to call out your teammates. I don't know. Basically, that team, other than Chris Bryant and Rizzo, is struggling on offense. And their pitching hasn't exactly been as good as they've been in the past couple of years. Hendricks was struggling at the beginning of the year, then he got hurt. Jake Arrieta is in his contract year, and he's pitching like a bottom of the rotation pitcher at this point. It's insane.
Bad. He's been bad.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of a contract he's going to get after this year, but it's not going to be with the Cubs, I'll tell you that. And so it's just weird to see. It must have been just magic or something last year, how everything fell into place with the Cubs and how good they are. And right now they're just a pretty 500 team. And then like I said, they could still maybe come in, sneak in a wild card spot, but they have to get better on offense, and their rotation has to get better too. So one more thing, that the All-Star voting, the voting is closed, and then the roster is going to be released tonight, but we can kind of view, I guess, what we have on the last ballot. Everything looks pretty good. Figures the one year that the All-Star game doesn't even matter. The fans seem to have gotten the vote right. Nothing really sticks out to me as something that shouldn't be in. If I really had to complain about anything, is it that there are no Rangers anywhere on any of the ballots, but you can't win or lose with that. So do you see any players that may not deserve where they're at right now?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I had was for designated hitter in the American League, I had Corey Dickerson over Nelson Cruz. But yeah, the fans have done a pretty good job this year. There's not, it seems like 7 Chicago Cubs in the starting lineup like last year. But I don't know. It could be the way that they sorted the ballot this year, where they you could sort by home runs and RBIs, or it's all in how they designed the ballot sometimes. And it seems like they've done a good job.
I actually do have an issue with how some of these ballots are made. So the way they've done these ballots is basically whatever the opening day roster is, that's the name that goes on the ballot. So therefore, Adrian Beltre is on the ballot, but Joey Gallo was not on the ballot. Adrian Beltre didn't play for a month and a half, so like there's no reason to vote for him. Joey Gallo has 21 home runs right now. He's top 5 in the majors. Obviously, he's not all-star level, but he should be getting more votes than he actually is.
Yeah.
And then you have, maybe players that come in a month or two into the season and then just play really, really good. I mean, Aaron Judge is obviously leading at the top of the board, but let's say he started the year in the minors and then came up a month later and started playing like this. He wasn't going to get that many votes. So it's the way that the ballots are designed sometimes leads me to believe that as long as you make the opening day roster and you have a track record of being pretty good, you could make the team.
2 guys I wanted to throw out there as guys that weren't on the ballot per se on the opening day roster, but have been invaluable for their teams is Marwin Gonzalez for the Astros, utility player. So he doesn't really have one position, but I think he's deserving of all-star consideration given his offensive success this year. And then internationally, Chris Taylor for the Dodgers, he's really been good in filling in multiple positions in the outfield and the infield. So I think those are 2 players that deserve consideration and might get in as reserves.
Oh, and another one too, Cody Bellinger.
Yes, yeah.
He came in a month into the. He's been as good as Aaron Judge has been. I think both of them are going to end up winning Rookie of the Year. We talked high praise of him at the beginning of the season, and he's just been better than expectation, and he's not getting all-star votes. That's not as to say that he won't make the team, because obviously the players choose the subs of the rosters, and they got to choose one person per team at minimum. So.
Right.
For the Rangers, I'd say no one's going to get in via the vote for players vote or for filling in. Elvis Andrus definitely has the talent and the stats this year. His slugging percentage is at a peak of his career. Like I said, he's reached double-digit home runs already. Like I said, there's no better shortstop in the league right now except Correa, and so I think he'll make it. And I think Darvish has a slight chance of making the rotation. He's just gotten all his strikeouts, and the same thing he's been doing every year. He just hasn't had much success with his win-loss record, and sometimes people still pay attention to that. So Darvish and Andrews for me. And what about the Astros other than the leaders?
Yeah, I think Altuve, Springer, and Correa are all deserving of starting, and at the last ballot update that they were going to start. As far as reserves, I think Marwin Gonzalez has an outside shot. I don't know if he makes it per se. But in the pitching, I think Chris Davinsky for sure in the bullpen. I know they traditionally just pick closers to be in the All-Star game, but the last couple of years they've picked these long relievers guys. And I think Davinsky has been so good in the bullpen. And then Keuchel, I don't know if even if he's selected, he would pitch given his injury issues. And then McCullers, same thing. So those are the guys that I think are deserving.
So that's the rosters. They'll be released tonight, and then obviously there'll be the final vote and fill-ins for injuries and things like that. They'll start trickling in the next 10 days. I'm just really wanting to wonder if Joey Gallo is going to end up getting in the home run derby, because that could be nuts with Judge and Sano and George Springer, possibly Cody Bellinger. Who knows? Like the home run derby could be pretty exciting this year, I think.
Do you buy into the fact that like when Josh Hamilton was in it and he was so good in New York that he said it like affected his swing the rest of the year? Do you buy that? Or
yeah, I do. Being a little overzealous like that. Like if you look at Rougned Odor right now, like he's having a very subpar year. He still has 13 home runs. He got 2 home runs at the beginning of the year, and his swing has just been awful ever since. So I do think that there is some mental issue with, I hit a lot of home runs, I guess I got to change my swing, and all you do is strike out after that. Now that is to say, I don't have a problem with Joey Gallo entering the home run derby because his swing is already awful. So I don't think it can get any worse from now.
I guess let's talk about some UT basketball. So Mohamed Bamba was a top recruit from Shaka Smart this past class. He was in the news this past week. His brother basically calling him out, saying that he accepted benefits from an agent that would put him ineligible this upcoming season. His brother wanted basically to become his agent after he attended business school, and then this agent came in and basically his brother has this relationship with this guy now, and it looks like he's going to sign with him. So what do you make on this whole situation?
I think it's just a lot of petty jealousy, at least with the reports that I've read and the radio that I've heard that talked about this. This seems just like a lot of petty jealousy. A couple points that I would make, and that is that the agent that that's being accused of having these relations with Bamba. They've known the family since basically he was a child, basically steering him towards a basketball career, making sure that he wasn't getting into trouble, that kind of thing. His brother is actually his stepbrother or his half brother, so it's not like he's been in the equation the entire time of Bamba's childhood. To me, and then the medium, that the way that this rant was kind of published, a 22-minute Facebook live rant where he just seems pretty petty and salty just about the whole situation. Bamba is going to have a decent career in the NBA, most likely, given with his probably one and done status at Texas. He could change the Texas basketball program, and he's probably going to be a star. So if I were his stepbrother, I would want to maybe stir up some controversy. And if you were jealous, at least that's what I would say, is you would want to stir up some controversy and try and make him not as big of a deal because you wanted that stardom or you wanted that fandom. Now, the ultimate side effect is that Bamba could most likely cut him out if he does indeed get famous and rich and powerful, at least in the NBA. I just think it's a lot of petty jealousy, unsubstantiated claims, not a lot of fact checking. The NCAA really doesn't have anything that would suggest that any relationship that Bamba had with this agent violated any NCAA rules. So, like I said, petty jealousy.
Yeah, and how does it benefit him? Like, did he think that Bamba was gonna sign him as an agent after this? It doesn't do any good for him. So I don't understand. And if he comes to ask for money now, I don't think he's gonna get any. Let's move on to shout outs. So Evan, you have any?
So I got a few shout outs. Last week, the Travelers Championship, Jordan Spieth had an incredible bunker shot on the first playoff hole. He ended up making the playoffs and had this incredible bunker shot that ended up sinking the win for the birdie on the playoff. So Jordan Spieth won the Travelers Championship. Looks like his game got on about a week too late. He would have probably rather had that at the U.S. Open. But it does breathe a sigh of relief, at least in knowing that Jordan Spieth isn't off this season. He could potentially sneak into another major maybe in a couple weeks. And so shout out to him for winning the Travelers. Shout out to the University of Florida, as much as my dad may hate it as a Georgia fan. But the University of Florida won the College World Series against LSU over this past week. And of best out of three, they won the first two games, so they didn't need to play the third. So congrats to them for doing that. Then shout out to Drew Robinson. He's a utility guy on the Rangers, or he was on the Rangers, but then they optioned him, who got his first hit in Yankee Stadium, and it was a home run. So the last player to do that for the Rangers was Jurickson Profar. So I guess that tells into how much confidence you think Drew Robinson's career may have. But again, congrats to him for getting his first career hit, and that being a home run in Yankee Stadium. And then shout out to Anthony Niemi, more like a happy trails to him, who was officially bought out by the Dallas Stars and is going to be placed on waivers, leaving Ben Bishop and Kari Lehtinen as the Stars goalies for the next upcoming year. Niemi is going to get paid $3 million over the next 2 years to do nothing, basically, unless he obviously signs with a different team. Shout out to him for getting paid to do nothing.
Okay, and then shout outs for me. First, Taco Charlton of the Dallas Cowboys, the first round pick. We all knew this was coming, but he signed an endorsement deal with Taco Bueno. So congratulations to him landing that endorsement. I think the writing was on the wall when he got drafted, and I think that's possibly the best name ever, Taco. Also, shout out to Jeff Van Gundy. He is a former Rockets coach. He still lives in Houston. Obviously a analyst for the NBA on ESPN and ABC. But he's going to coach the 2019 USA World Cup basketball team during its qualifying. It's going to be mainly a team of D-leaguers, but I think the big thing for this is, could this possibly be a start of a return to coaching? Because his name has seemed to have floated out there every year when there's an opening for an NBA job, and he's always turned it down and saying he's very happy with his broadcasting job, but we'll see if this ignites the coaching fires for him again. Shout out to John Tumpane. This is an incredible story out of Pittsburgh. He was an umpire that's scheduled to work a game there with the Pirates, and he was going on a jog in the afternoon before the game, and he saw a woman on the Roberto Clemente Bridge, and she was about to jump. And so he basically went over and he held her, prevented her from jumping, basically, and before help could come, and she got taken away to the local hospital. But big shout out to John Tumpane for being a lifesaver there and being in the right position at the right time and making the right decision.
Yeah, definitely. I think umpires are people too. So sometimes we give them flack. Again, they're people too. I mean, Joe West, look at what happened to Joe West last night. Someone threw something at him, and obviously that fan got ejected, but no one deserves that.
Right. Yeah. And they have just such a tough job because, I mean, now with technology and instant replay, it's the job they do seeing things real time and making the call more times than not is incredible. Shout out to the umpires out there. Also, as two Nates on Sports, I feel like I should mention that the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest yearly on July 4th in Brooklyn is going to happen this upcoming week. Last year was revenge of Joey Chestnut. He lost for the first time in forever in 2015 to Matt Stoney. So it seems like that's going to be a rivalry. So if you're up early on July 4th, take a look at that. Stoney versus Chestnut.
Honestly, that's one of my favorite July 4th traditions is watching the hot dog eating contest. I've actually been to 2 of them in real life, and it's an incredible experience. Just the entire crowd gathering at that one intersection, surfing Stillwell, whether it's 100 degrees or raining or windy or anything, that intersection is always packed, and all the festivities that go on there, having the mayor there, having the giant hot dog dancing around, and then having Nathan's Famous open right next door, and the crowd gathering for the contest and then going straight to Nathan's afterwards. It's an incredible contest festival, whatever you want to call it. My money's on Stoney this year, so let's go.
How does it look in person? Like on TV, you see these dudes stuffing their face. It doesn't look that appetizing when you're seeing them dip buns, but like in person, what does it look like?
It's pretty much the same. Obviously, you got the crowd around you. You got the rotating camera going above you and doing zoom ins and stuff like that. I think the thing that you notice is you can actually hear them, munching down. I'll hear the entire crowd, and it's one of those things. It's kind of like it's disgusting to watch, but then afterwards you're like, I kind of want a hot dog.
Yeah. Okay. And final shout out is actually to our Evan Tenenbaum. So congratulations on getting a new job in Durham, North Carolina. We expect you to give us reports on Ray's top prospects now on the Durham Bulls.
I'll try, but I'm going to spend most of my time at Cameron Indoor with Coach K.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, I want you guys to visit our website, twonatesonsports.com. Also, like us on Facebook at Two Nates on Sports. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play Music, where you'll get a notification as soon as we release our new episodes. We also have an email address, so if you have any comments or suggestions, email us at twonatesonsports@gmail.com. Well, thank you, Evan Tenenbaum, so much for coming on.
Thanks.
I want to wish everybody a happy July 4th, and we'll talk to you guys next week.